All right, welcome back everyone. We are still here, day 4 morning session, the last session of this morning, but we'll be back after lunch with some more. My name is Jake Hall, I'm the Manufacturing Millennial, and of course, my one and only co-host, Chris Lukey from Manufacturing Happy Hour. Now, we're in the morning still, so we're not having some incredible drinks, but we are having some incredible guests from Asyril. Gentlemen, thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you.
Awesome. So I have Lloyd and Tony from Asyril. Let's start off really quick. For those of the audience that don't know who Asyril is, I'll start with you, Lloyd. Who is Asyril Feeder? What is their part of the industry?
And describe it as if we're having beers together in Switzerland, where your company's based.
Simplicity. Oh, yeah. What would we be drinking in Switzerland if we were having this?
Well, normally we would start with a nice rosé.
Okay.
And then we call it an apéro. And then we would move on to maybe a red wine and then some beers and finish off with some spirits.
This is a really long interview.
Oh,
I like it.
It's great. My favorite kind.
This is no short conversation by any means, if that's where we're starting.
But of course, some cheese and chocolate.
Cheese and chocolate.
Yeah,
Fondue,
the right pairing.
Oh, I love that. Think about it if we were having a beer. I mean, I always struggle if it's anyone outside the industry, like trying to explain what a flexible feeder is. So, I try just to say robots, vision, and that kind of satisfies them enough. But for people here, people in the industry, it's a flexible feeder. It's a part shaker. We separate bulk product, so a robot can then pick those parts after something called I+ has visualized those components. It's very flexible. You can use it on different types of parts using the same hardware.
Now, with traditional automation, a lot of times automation has always been around high production quantity, low SKU. That's what we've seen in the industry for years. That's what we see a lot of times where automotive was first adapting something. If we were making a part, we were making 100,000 of that part, not 1,000 of that part. And when we look at automation as something that's transforming the industry as becoming more flexible with those parts, I think that's one thing where Asyril we're seeing is it needs to be flexible with the way we're picking and replacing parts then to go into an assembly. So from your traditional bowl feeder, which is running one part, and if you want to do a tool change, it's a massive process. For people who can't necessarily visual what a flexible feeder is, I have sound coils on a base, and it vibrates this tabletop with harmonics to be able to orient parts in the correct direction. Is that a good summary, Tony?
That sums it up perfectly. It spreads out the parts evenly, so that then with the vision system or some kind of location system, you can find the good pick coordinates and send those to a robot, and then the robot picks them up. And it's clear, and that what you said about the high volume, that's definitely the case with Asyril. I mean, we started in obviously Swiss watch industry.
Yeah, tell us about that. So how did Asyril get its start? You guys were doing very small components at first. I mean, there's much larger systems now, but where did you guys get your start for we should make this type of system?
That was the whole start. Yeah, the Swiss watch industry at that time, 20 years ago, so it's been around quite a bit. And a watchmaker is a very qualified person. And the last thing you want a watchmaker doing is spending their time with tweezers sorting these small parts out. So we had to find a way to prepare the parts for the production that the watchmaker can take with the tweezers and assemble the watch accordingly. And that was the big problem, that the bowl feeders don't work. The parts are too small. They damage like the ruby stones in the parts. So we had to come up with flexible feeding. And that's really the heart of it. And then going small to big was not a problem, but our competitors have the problem. They have to go big to small, which is not that easy.
Great example. Love tying it in with the Swiss heritage as well. You've been doing this for a little while. I'm curious, what applications or what's kind of the next thing you're seeing in this space that you're excited about?
Yeah, I mean, it's really is flexibility, where some machine builders, they are told that they need to make an assembly machine, but they might not know exactly what the part is that they're going to be assembling. So, that's almost an impossible situation, how you can design and build the tooling when you don't know what the final product is going to look like. So, by bringing flexibility with the flexible feeder, you can adapt the whatever the product's going to be. We'll be able to feed it on our platform. So it's the same hardware, every time, but you can change different parts for many different industries. You know, it's
And I think the main industry that, we have our office now in Minneapolis, and that's not just per chance. We went specifically Minneapolis because one of the closest things to the Swiss watch industry, as we see it, is the medical device industry.
Oh,
and as you know,
interesting.
Minneapolis is the place for medical devices, especially small medical devices and small parts. And there we've had a huge success.
And
in
that's
that
how you
market.
picked your basisally U.S. headquarters.
Because we were looking, there's obviously no SWAT. Well, there's a little in Pennsylvania, but that's kind of disappeared. And then Minneapolis was a no-brainer. And ideally, it's in the center of America. And then the other thing, the skilled labor, which is obviously a huge topic here in the United States. But Minneapolis, you have a lot of good people that are familiar with working with small parts.
You know, one thing I'd be curious to learn about, we've been starting to ask this because this is the last day of the show, right? And we just asked this in our last interview. I'm curious, something new that you learned, whether maybe it's a new opportunity for your business, maybe it's something more macro level that you picked up after a couple of days here at the show. So Lloyd, let's start with you on that one.
Yeah, I think it's that having a common platform, various technologies, all talking together, all working together. It seems to be the request I'm hearing. I'm seeing the trend that it's smart, AI based. Everything's talking to everything on the machine.
Same thing for you.
Yeah, I think communication, machines talking to each other, and the big thing that I see in the future is intuitive programming. We talked about it. Skilled labor is a huge issue, and you cannot hire specific engineers to be able to talk to specific robots or specific machines. You need to have intuitive programming amongst each other, and I think we see as an industry, we're all interested at automation promotes, and we're all interested at our different equipment, robots with flex feeders, with vision systems, lasers, and whatever other technologies out there that we need to be able to talk to each other, and then that human beings that have certain skills that can program a cell phone are able to program our machines. And there is the future.
So we're talking about flexibility. We're talking about working with partners and manufacturers. There's robots all over the floor. What's it been like with Asyril's experience working with different robot manufacturers to help deploy your solution, right? Because even if you can magically orient the part, which is really exciting to watch with harmonics, and get them at the right orientation, you still need something to pick that part. What's it been like working with different robot manufacturers, and any fun success stories that you can share around great partners that you've developed over the years?
Yeah, it's been great fun working with all of them. As a Swiss company, we try to be very neutral and get on with all of the
That's a great answer.
That's why it's easy for us, because we're used to diplomatic.
So yeah, I mean, we started with our product having TCP/IP, and then we've gone on to other field bus communications to work with all of the different robots. And yeah, we work with them to develop plugins. This is based on customer requests. I think it comes back to being flexible, the fact that the hardware can work with any robot brand over TCP/IP. And then there's just other considerations, things like gripper design. Gripper design is so important when you come to pick parts. It's all about cycle time. You know, if you've got a huge gripper, you're kind of restricting an area where you can pick parts. So, designing a good gripper, working with the robot manufacturer on this to advise the customers to give them the best solution. But yeah, I have really great experience. I mean, there's some great guys in the company, and
Awesome.
And I think one of the biggest success stories have been, like Lloyd says, we do work with all the robot companies, but going back to the beginnings of Universal Robots and Universal Robots program UR Caps.
Yeah, you guys worked at the UR
We
Cap
were one of the
program,
first
plugged
ones
in with
that
that.
kind of stumbled into it. We didn't realize the potential, but now in hindsight, it's 2020. That's I think what they did there was unique, making this app idea that you can use another gripper, robot teeth, you can use an Asyril feeder, and that for the customer that it's easy. I'm going to use this, that, pick the app, and
Love to hear a bit from each of you about how you both ended up at Asyril, right, and got into the industry a little bit in general. I mean, Lloyd, maybe we'll start with you because I know a bit about your background. I mean, you were with Keonce and Cognex, I believe, before jumping into this. Feels like a real natural transition. So maybe you can lead us off on that question.
Yeah, sure. Working with those specific companies focused really on vision. Kind of like was just focused on, here's the vision tools, this is a solution to your application, and the handling of parts was not really something I'd thought too much about. I knew technologies existed. I mean, bowl feeding is a great technology. I mean, I've stood at production lines just watching these things, the parts move around, like, wow, how does it do that?
Yeah.
So I knew that there was technology that existed, but I didn't really know so much about flexible feeding. I still feel that it's an emerging technology that, we're trying to promote, we're trying to get the industry aware of flexible feeders. I mean, being here, there's so many ways to describe it. You know, shaker table, shaker plate, flexible feeder, vibrator. You know, there's lots of different names that I'm hearing, but we call it a flexible feeder. So yeah, my background in vision really helped. I'm working then with Asyril. We launched a new product, something called the I+, which is a specific control system for part localization. There's definitely a market pull that product is more, doing inspection of parts, but there's so many great vision systems out there on the market. Use those for inspection of parts and dimensional checks. I+, use that for feeding, managing your feeding application, and it'll give you the coordinates, will give the robot the coordinates as fast as possible.
Awesome. And then what's your background going into this?
So I started off actually in the laser business, so industrial lasers for welding, cutting and drilling, cutting stents, for example, also the watch industry, welding small watch components. And what surprised me was I was really focused on lasers, also worked then for a system integrator, so always concentrating on laser process. And we would design a laser process, and then we would install that at a customer, and then there was maybe in front of that a sorting station to prepare the parts for the laser process, maybe afterwards a quality inspection system. Here 100,000, 200,000, 300,000, $1 million piece of equipment. And what was for me a huge eye-opener was in watching it work. And then how were parts being transferred from machine to machine? A human being using a tray.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait a minute, we got this great technologies, all these great technology processes, and you're kidding me? We're using a person go in between? And that's for me then when I really picked up on things like flexible feeding, which is usually at the start of the whole process, whatever the next process is going to be. And now it seems logical, but back then I didn't realize, we got to automate A all the way to Z and not just think of our little spaces that we're specialized in.
Absolutely. So you guys started your journey making or flexible feeding parts for Swiss watches. Yep. You now have your headquarters, U.S. headquarters in Minneapolis. Yep. What are some really cool components that you've been shipped and say, you know what, test this. Can we feed this? Can we orient this?
That's a fun question.
What are some unique ones that the audience probably would have never thought of, that you open this box and you say, what in the world? What are some fun things that you've seen?
So, I mean, it's Swiss related, but the tags used on cattle, this for me is like, why and how, to see the tags for the cattle. But when you think about it, there's so many different colors, they mean so many different things for the dairy, the farming industry. And then another one was the spray nozzles used in agriculture for spraying different chemicals onto crops. You can't mix them, so they're a disposable item. It's something I'd never even thought of, that there's so many variants, but they need a way to be able to feed them. And I think as a sales guy, it's always hard to say no. You get an application, you say, yeah, we want to do it. We once had some, again, Swiss, some chocolate. Wrapped in foil.
Right? I'm really impressed with this Swiss undercurrent theme we've worked into every other comment. I'm very impressed.
I love Switzerland. Living there as well. It's an amazing place. Yeah,
love it as well.
The next vacation destination, it's got to be Switzerland for you guys.
Interlaken. Yeah.
And so, being able to say no when you've got like this chocolate decoration that's wrapped in foil, that when you start vibrating something like this, flexible feeding isn't suitable for that type of product. But yeah, it's so diverse and so interesting. I mean, maybe I'm a bit of a geek, but getting excited by like electronic components. You know, there's so much variation, and it's the perfect size. It's the perfect fit for flexible feeding. But yeah, really varied. I don't know if you have.
No, that's in Minneapolis. Getting back to the medical device industry, that's sometimes amazing.
Yeah.
Sadly, we can't say too much. Obviously, there's a lot of non-disclosure agreements. I don't want to get myself in
Yeah.
trouble. But there's some stuff that goes into the body, and what they want to do is really impressive and cool. And the last thing that I just found out at this show, we actually have now a feasibility study, because that's what we do in Minneapolis. We do a feasibility study for the customers. Little worms, very microscopic worms, and that goes it's something that I do with physics and sanitizing a product. And these are microscopic animals that do that.
So you're feeding live organic material.
Yeah. So
Interesting.
and the problem is they'd like to bunch up, and what they want to do with the feeder is spread them out.
It's interesting. So we've talked about partnerships this week. On Monday, we interviewed Joe from Universal Robots. He talked about the partnership deployment across the U.S. You also work through partnerships and distributors. What's that been like coming over to America and deploying that partnership over what, the past 6-7 years is about that time frame? Am I correct with that?
Yep.
What's it been like deploying that partnership over the time, and also during the pandemic for the past 3 years?
Yeah, I mean, our distributors, our partners are the lifeblood of our sales infrastructure. And obviously, with the pandemic, not seeing people, no face-to-face interaction, it was extremely hard. So being here, seeing people for the first time, shaking their hands, you know, we're still at that phase where, is it a fist bump? Is it a handshake?
Yeah.
Is it the elbow?
Elbows, yeah.
So yeah, just meeting people, connecting, letting people touch the technology, you know, and coming back to our partners, and you know, just continuing that relationship, and sharing stories, sharing information about applications, and how we might tune or get the right parameters, and support them and help them. I was lucky enough to make some customer visits with some of our partners here in the US, and for me that's the best part of the job, you know, interacting with customers, learning what their problems are and how our technology can be used to find a solution for them.
Yeah, I think in the beginning was the big decision. What do we do? You know, classic European companies, they like to have control, so they like to go direct, and then but they don't realize that North America is a very big piece of land. So to hire, you almost have to hire 6 well-trained people and have them spread out across the United States, and that starts becoming an expensive endeavor. So we really quickly went into distribution and haven't looked back, because it makes total sense, this local contact, and I think COVID proved this immensely. There's only so much you can do through teams. The personal aspect, that's key. And if you have local distributors that can go to the customer, and I don't have to fly out from Switzerland every time, that's gold.
And I think that's what's driven a lot of really good success with companies who are coming over from Europe, is understanding that the distribution sales model is different in the U.S. than other parts of the world. And if companies can be flexible with that approach, they can find some great opportunity.
I was just curious, you know, what, you know, how do you share that story to make sure your distributors are successful telling the story of Asyril and making sure they get that right? What do you do to ensure success? I'm very interested in channel partnerships. I spent a lot of my career in that, so I love hearing the things you do to ensure that message gets, you know, taken appropriately and you know, ultimately results in more customers.
Besides bribing them with Swiss chocolate.
Oh, that's
Yes,
good.
yes. I'm glad you
That's a good answer. Well, okay, maybe a watch we could talk about too. Right?
Or a watch. That's a little bit more.
No, I think you need to support, but distributors are people too, and at the end of the day, yes, money is always an important issue. Everyone wants to make money, but and you feel this on the floor. Automation, we're here to help, and we're realizing there is reshoring. I think we can't ignore that. Globalization, deglobalization, that's another topic. But the fact is, in America, we need to start manufacturing. We have to bring manufacturing back. And the only way we can do it, and you guys talked about it before, is communication between the different suppliers, hence the distributors also. And these distributors, they're interested that their local state or wherever they're representing that they're going to be number one in production. And that's why you don't really need to motivate them with money or anything like that. They know the success, and they know that they have to help their states because they want their kids to get a good education so they can work, have good jobs, and good jobs are in intelligent automation.
Yeah.
Well, as we wrap up here, you've certainly brought a little slice of Switzerland to bring manufacturing jobs here to the U.S. and Minneapolis. We've enjoyed the conversation. Is there anything you wish we would have asked you that we haven't yet as we wrap our conversation, or a final call to action on where to connect with Asyril?
Yeah, so maybe I take the second part and yeah, through the website of Asyril.com, and following us on LinkedIn, subscribing to our newsletter, which can be done through the Asyril.com. And coming back to the first point, I think, yeah, maybe what's been the best demo at the show?
Ooh, yeah, let's hear
What
it.
have you liked so far?
Yeah, so it's really hard to choose, right? There's so much great technology here. From a cool point of view, I think it's the DJing robot, personally.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh, in the ABB booth that's got the
yeah,
UV?
that's a good demo because real applications, real parts to some people aren't cool. So how do you make a trade show demo cool? So we got poker chips and we got
Swiss
some
chocolate.
Yeah, exactly, Swiss chocolate. We got some candy over there. So yeah, for me, I think the DJing booth is my one.
Well, of course, I have to toe the corporate line. So our parts that we have, we have some small ceramic parts on our Aussie Cube 50. I always think that's really cool, the small parts and into the bigger parts. And then on the other stands, what really got me and showed the spectrum of automation is what Mechatemic recently did with the Fanuc mirroring the Fanuc robot.
yeah.
The largest and smallest just happened, I think, last night or whenever they decided to do that. I think that sums it up perfectly. And that shot where you have the Mechatemic, the small robot, and the big robot in the background, yeah, that shows the spectrum that we're talking about.
Yeah.
We're talking about parts and industries all over.
I really enjoyed the beer, the robot that was handing out beer yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, had to stay on brand there. So, Jake, what about yourself? Take us home.
I think one of the most exciting things was how we're seeing vision impact robotics. If you were to walk over to the VO Robotics booth, I thought that was so cool where they have a Skyward robot running at full speed and they have cameras 20, 30 feet up in the air that are completely working and mapping the point cloud space around it. And with the future of automation being this idea of being fully collaborative with industrial robots in a workspace that's safe but efficient and high speed, that's where I love this idea of manufacturing moving forward.
Excellent. Great round of questions to get everyone involved to wrap this up. We'll be back with more interviews this afternoon. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks to Asyril for jumping on.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Thank you.